Well, again, thank you guys for joining us this morning. And I am going to, are we recording? Just to make sure. Awesome. Okay, so we know that y'all could be enjoying those favorite vacation spots right now, but instead have chosen to be here with us today. So we appreciate y'all for that. This is the Decision for Teacher Recruitment Support webinar. And next slide. I am Blair Clausen, and I'm the Director of Educator Recruitment and Development here at TEA. And I have two colleagues joining me today. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Burkhart, and I'm the manager for educator support, or project manager for educator support, and I work on the education and training curriculum.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Coleman. I am the educator recruitment and development specialist here on the ERD team, and I work specifically on the Grow Your Own grant. Welcome.
All right, thanks, guys. So a few logistical pieces. I'm glad to see y'all are familiar with being able to submit stuff in that Q&A area. So feel free to enter in questions throughout this presentation. We'll get to all your questions later on in a Q&A portion of this webinar. We'll also be following up with slides and recordings, and all the materials will be posted on the TEA website on the TClass page. So we're going to start off this webinar with a recap of TClass. So if you happen to miss any of the earlier TClass webinars, no worries, since we'll be reviewing some of those key points here. So we would like to kind of get a sense of the group's familiarity with TClass, just so I know kind of how much detail I should go into here. So if you could enter in the question area the number that most applies to you. So one is you've watched some of the other TClass webinars or you may have read the TClass guidance document. Or two, this is the first time you are learning about TClass. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so I see a lot of ones. Awesome, a few twos. Great, so we have some folks on the call who are pretty familiar with TClass, or maybe have seen some webinars. Great. Okay. So TClass stands for Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Supports. And it's a targeted set of supports and a way for districts to receive additional state and federal funding to support strategies and learning acceleration. This is the first time TA has ever engaged in a grant like this. What makes this grant unique is that it's an opportunity for LEAs to access this TClass funding and support through one single streamlined grant application that mimics the ease of a formula grant. So that means no narrative responses or need for contracting with grant writers, which I know is especially beneficial for our rural and small districts. It also has an easy methodology for budget calculations and things like that. So your LEA can figure out how much they actually could potentially receive with the TClass grant. So this TClass grant gives us the opportunity to award $1.4 billion in services and supports out to the state. This one single grant will provide access to 15 customized supports around learning acceleration. The LEA will choose which of these supports is the best fit for them and make their selection on the application. So you don't actually have to choose all 15, you'll pick the one that's right for you. The hope is that this provides an easy pathway for districts to access all of this funding and support through one single application. So most of you have probably already seen this slide as well, but TClass includes 5 accelerated learning strategies, including strategic planning, instructional materials, teacher pipelines, more time, and innovative school models. So if you've been on a TClass grant or a call with the commissioner, those three in the middle you've probably seen a lot of. Talked a lot about it at the legislative session, and the commissioner brings it up quite a bit. The two on the end, strategic planning and innovative school models, have been added as accelerated learning supports. So strategic planning includes a set of supports to really kick the work off. It supports districts in planning, prioritizing, launching, and establishing a continuous improvement process to ensure learning acceleration strategies are appropriate and, of course, actually effective for the district. Innovative school models is unique in that it provides an opportunity for districts to give more targeted campus supports that may not necessarily be needed district-wide. Today, we're going to be focusing on that middle one there, teacher pipelines. So going a little bit deeper into these acceleration learning strategies, there are 10 available decision points for districts. You all are in the decision for teacher recruitment support today. So if you're familiar with Grow Your Own, it's essentially the same thing, which you'll see as we get into the deep dive portion of this webinar. Before we go deeper into decision 4, again, I'd like to get a sense of how familiar you all are with the Grow Your Own program, since it's essentially the same program. So again, in the question area, go ahead and put the number that most applies to you. 1, you have never heard of Grow Your Own. 2, you've heard about Grow Your Own. Or 3, you've applied to or received the Grow Your Own grant before. Okay. So seeing a lot of mix of 1s and 2s. Great. Well, if you've never heard of Grow Your Own before, you are in for a treat because it's a pretty great program. Also see a 3. So someone is in here has actually gotten the grant before. That's awesome. The purpose of the Grow Your Own support is to increase entry of qualified, diverse candidates into the teaching profession, particularly in small and rural school settings. There are 2 main strategies we use to accomplish this. 1 is to provide supports for paraprofessionals to become certified teachers. The research behind this strategy is that these are individuals who are invested in the community, and they often mirror the population of students. They are also familiar with the district and the students and will likely remain in the district long term. The other strategy is to elevate the perception of the teaching career by expanding high quality education and training high school courses. One of our sayings in Grow Your Own is, your future teachers are in your high school seats. This strategy is about exposing students to and encouraging them to consider a career in teaching. Best case scenario is that they graduate college as a certified teacher and come back to the community where they're from to teach. But at the very least, students will walk away with a respect and understanding of what it takes to be a quality teacher. So we have a few reflective questions here, and you might see some page numbers also at the top of these slides. If you were looking at the TClass guidance document, that is where you can find these exact same set of questions. So on page 47 of the guidance document, we have these reflective questions to decide if this is a good fit for your district, if this is a need for your district. So I'm going to give you all about 30 seconds to read through these questions and think about how they might apply to your district. So if you know that your district has teacher shortages, significant demographic gaps between teachers and students, or high attrition rates, this could be a highly effective support to establish and grow your teacher pipelines in your district. This support is also available to any LEA. So you might have remembered me mentioning that rural and small schools is something that we target, but if you're interested in this program, any LEA can apply. As I mentioned earlier, there are two main types of strategies or supports specific to this decision for. Again, you can follow along on page 23 of the guidance document. The first is to support our paraprofessionals in finishing their bachelor's degree and teaching certificate or their teaching certificate only. So this is done by providing a stipend to cover tuition, fees, and living expenses they may accrue as paraprofessionals are working towards that goal. If they're working on certification only, they can receive a stipend up to $7,500. If they're working on finishing their bachelor's degree and obtaining a teaching certificate, they can receive a stipend up to $18,000. The district will also receive funding to cover administrative or indirect costs, which is either $500 or $1,000 per candidate, which is dependent on which track that the candidate is pursuing. Also, I do want to call out that there is a limit of 6 paraprofessional candidates per LEA. The second type of support is to launch or grow an education and training program across the district. If you're unfamiliar with the education and training courses, these are a set of high school courses that sit under CTE. These courses train students on becoming a teacher and set them on a path to pursue a career in education. There's also an option to have 2 of those courses in the sequence be offered as dual credit. For this type of support, all high schools within the LEA would receive funding to offer these courses. If the high school has offered education and training courses before and would like this grant to support and grow their program, the high school would receive $8,000. If the high school has never offered education and training courses before, it would receive $10,000. Also, if the high school decides that they'd like to offer these courses for dual credit, whether or not it's been offered in the past or not, it would also be eligible to receive $10,000. In addition to high schools receiving funding, we want our most effective teachers teaching these classes, right? So to incentivize this, teachers who teach these classes will receive either a $5,000 stipend or a $10,000 stipend if they're teaching these classes for dual credit. The district will also receive an extra $500 or $1,000 per candidate to use for those administrative and or indirect costs. There is, again, a maximum here. It's 2 stipend recipients per high school. So when you're deciding which of these programs is right for you, you have the option of choosing 4A, 4B, and 4C, or both. 4A is that strategy that'll get you to quality certified teachers in your classroom quickly, whereas 4B and 4C is more of a long-term strategy to really cultivate the next generation of teachers for your district. Both options, though, support building that talented, quality, and diverse teacher pipeline. So we are interested in kind of getting a sense of where y'all are landing. So in the chat, enter which option you are currently most interested in. Okay, let's see. Awesome. I'm seeing some that are interested in both. I mean, they're both great tracks to really build that teacher pipeline. So I think that's a great choice. Also seeing some interested in 4A, getting those paraprofessionals in the doors as certified teachers. Great. Thank y'all for putting that in there and being engaged. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth in those education and training courses. So this is the typical 4-course sequence that high schools offer. Principles of education, instructional practices, and the practicum can actually be taught by any certified Texas teacher. The other pieces that I do want to highlight is that we're developing an education and training curriculum for those 3 courses that have the star next to them that will be available in fall 2022. Also, another bonus to receiving this decision for funding is that that curriculum comes with implementation supports. So your teachers will get some additional supports there. Also, another bonus, if students successfully complete 2 or more of these courses, including either instructional practices or the practicum, they'll actually be eligible for an industry-based certification, and they can receive their Educational Aid 1 certificate. So what does the implementation timeline look like? This decision for support runs through summer 2024. So this upcoming year is essentially your planning year. It gives you an opportunity to think through things like selection of paraprofessionals, partnering with educator preparation programs, considerations for master scheduling updates to offer these courses, and setting your milestones and metrics for success. The following 2 years will actually be when you're implementing that plan, tracking your milestones and metrics, and making any updates as needed. I also did want to spend a little bit of time kind of covering some of the general requirements here. So this is on page 56 of that guidance document. So these general requirements are for either 4A or 4B and 4C. So this kind of these are overarching requirements. First, we do have a list of candidate requirements for both paraprofessional candidates and the education and training teachers who will be receiving those stipends. So all candidates should meet those requirements, and we'll be asking the district to submit a list to us on March 1st, 2022. Also, there should be a signed MOU between the district and the candidates receiving the stipend, which will cover things like staying in the district for a certain number of years that you think is appropriate. We'll also be asking the LEA to submit quarterly reports on specific performance measures. These will be things such as names of participating candidates, how many education and training course offerings you're providing, and the number of students enrolled in those classes. For requirements specific to the paraprofessional certification support, candidates will need to be able to finish their bachelor's degree and certification within the grant timeline, which would be summer 2024. So just kind of be cognizant of that, because that's a big one to be thinking about. Paraprofessional candidates seeking only the certification should all be enrolled in the same educator preparation program. We found that this helps to foster that cohort model and actually increases completion rates for those paraprofessionals. The LEA should also offer paid release time and schedule flexibility in case the paras need to attend classes or any other course-related requirements. And I do want to again just mention that this is a maximum of 6 candidates per LEA. For the education and training support, the instructional practices and or the practicum will need to be offered to students in the 22-23 school year. And then both of these classes will need to be offered in the 23-24 school year. Again, all high schools within the LEA would need to offer those courses. Another requirement is that student organizations, including TAFE and FCCLA, which we know are large components in engaging and retaining students in this program of study, need to be offered. So one of those will need to be available to students as well. Also, every summer, we host a really fun and engaging Grow Your Own Institute, where Grow Your Own district and campus leaders and teachers come together, they collaborate and learn about successful Grow Your Own programs, and attendance will be required for that event. I also mentioned earlier that we have an education and training curriculum that will be available. So we will be asking that E&T teachers pilot this curriculum and give us feedback on the quality and usability of that curriculum so we can make any improvements as necessary. We also know that the most successful education and training programs are created when LEAs have built strong marketing and student recruitment plans. So we are going to be asking for LEAs to submit those to see how you're engaging your high schoolers and getting them interested in signing up for those classes. And again, just want to mention there's a maximum of 2 stipend candidates per high school. Okay, so now we're moving into the question and answer portion and next steps. So first, we'll check the chat, and Ron or Beth, any questions that have come through?
Yes, Blair, we have one here that says, if the LEA has an early college high school, does the all high schools need to apply offer still apply?
All high schoolers in the district would need to be able to go to attend those classes. So we do have some exception models in the state. One example is the Rural Schools Innovation Zone, where the education and training courses are offered in one district, and students at surrounding districts can actually go to those classes. So if you receive the grant, basically the rule of thumb is, do all of my high schoolers have access to those education and training courses? And the answer should be yes.
Thank you, Blair. We have another question in the chat. Can districts work with an EPP to deliver dual credit courses? And I believe you answered that. But...
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely encourage the LEA EPP partnership. So the dual credit is a great option, I think, for high schoolers to get a head start on earning some of those college credits. So absolutely, yes. The instructional practices is the equivalent of EDUC 1301 as the dual credit class. And then the practicum is EDUC 2301, in case that helps as you're kind of starting those conversations with your local colleges.
Another question from Julie in the chat here. How does TEA define paraprofessionals? Sometimes we have employees with bachelor's degrees that want to become teachers that have positions other than the paraprofessional category.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I would say we've had this come up before, and Ron, feel free to jump in as well. I believe we did allow that. So if you have people who maybe you have a waiver potentially for some of those teachers who aren't certified, but they have their bachelor's degree and they're not necessarily paraprofessionals, we have allowed that. That could work as well to get them their certification. So they would be eligible.
Yeah, that's right, Blair. They'd be eligible as long as they fit the rest of the criteria for what was originally 2A and 2B, now is 4B and 4C, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that I mentioned there's a list of candidate requirements in there. If you have the guidance document open, you'll be able to link to that list of all the requirements. And as long as they meet those, you should be good to go.
We had Holly here ask if you could repeat the circumstances under which a student completing these courses can get an industry certification.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have to successfully complete And when we say successfully, they have to get a grade of 70 or higher percentage. And they have to complete at least either instructional practices or the practicum, and then the principles of education. So it has to be, essentially they have to get 3 credits total in this education and training program of study. So principles of education is typically offered to freshmen, and then instructional practices in the practicum can be offered sophomore to senior year. So they have to meet, the student has to meet those requirements, and then they would be eligible for that industry-based certification.
Great. Blair, we have a question here about GYO still being competitive funding under this. Someone might have missed part of that.
Yeah, so this is no longer a competitive grant since it's now part of TClass. So if you're familiar with the Grow Your Own grant program in the past, it was a competitive grant process that typically started in the fall. And now it's actually going to be it is part of this TClass, and it is not competitive. So if you feel like your district has a need for this program, essentially you'll just select that when you go to fill out the application. There's no narrative requirements or anything like that.
Great. Then we have a question here that I think I can quickly answer and move to the next one. Questions about 2 stipend candidates. So the 2 stipend candidates, that number refers to the education and training teachers per LEA. So Blair was mentioning each LEA is capped at 2 teachers for the course per high school. Students, there's no cap except however many students you can fit in your courses. And then 6 was the number, the max per LEA for paraprofessional candidates.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. So exactly like you said, if you have 10 high schools in your district, you can have 2 teachers that are teaching those education and training courses that are receiving those stipends at each high school. So you might have 20 teachers total in your district if you have 10 high schools and 2 teachers at each of those campuses teaching those classes.
Thanks, Blair. And then I'm going to answer this because I think this question is coming up a lot. I've tried to get back to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. There is no normal free-form chat feature here. So if we're mentioning chat, we mean the Q&A. So I think a lot of people are looking at that. So apologize for not just answering that earlier. I've been furiously typing to everybody who put that. So thank you all for being patient there. Q&A is the chat feature here, and only the host can see the questions here. Blair, we have a question. What happens if para candidates do not finish on time?
That's a great question. So we have that has happened before, and you'll see as you dig into the guidance document, essentially this is somewhat of an agreement between the paraprofessional and the district. So you might need to refer back to what type of language you might include in your MOU that you have with those paraprofessionals. And then essentially we disperse those funds across the 2 years. So let's say the para is eligible for that $18,000 stipend. They would get part of that money the first year, part of that money the second year of implementation. And if they don't finish, of course, the funding, that's it on the funding. And then it would be between kind of the district and the paraprofessional to figure out next steps for that candidate.
Awesome. And Blair, you actually kind of answered the next question. Karen here in the chat asked if the stipend for the teacher of the education and training classes, is it available for just the first year? And I can kind of take this one. As Blair mentioned, the funding amount that you see on the guidance documents, that is split in half. So they'll receive half of it after the first year and half after the second year.
Yeah.
Great. A couple of people asked that same question. So Blair, this is a good one from Lauren. If a district already has a grow your own program through a university set in place for this coming year, will they still qualify for the grant for this year to apply in this year's cycle?
So the question is, if the district already has a partnership with a higher education program, would they still qualify? Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, any LEA is eligible to apply for this grant. So again, if when the Qualtrics survey that I'll talk a little bit about here in a minute, it's very simple. And so you'll kind of go through, answer a few questions, and then like, are you interested in these supports? And then we'll ask you like, how many candidates would you like to have funded? How many high schools are in your district? Things like that. And that's essentially it. So it's, you are, yes, the short answer is yes, you are eligible, and it'll be a quick application process.
The next question asks about, are there still priority points, even though it's now a non-competitive opportunity?
That's a great question. So if the demand for these programs, which sounds like that might be the case, exceeds the funding amount that we have total, which right now we've allocated $2 million for this grant cycle, and there actually may be more available. They're still figuring some of that out, but it'll be at least 2 million. And what we'll do if demand does exceed that 2 million mark, then we will be kind of prioritizing districts based on needs. So one that we've used in the past is student enrollment numbers. So the smaller the district, then the more points essentially they'll get. And then we also will be prioritizing based on some other things like teacher vacancies, teacher attrition rates, student teacher demographic gaps, things like that.
Great. Blair, we have someone asking if you could just repeat for the group here the location of the candidate requirements from the guidance document.
Oh, where it's at in the guidance document. Let's see here. Let me go back. Let me check right now. So it should be on page 56 of the guidance document.
Excellent. So that was page 56.
Yeah, and it'll actually be a link there that will take you to the document.
And then we have 2 questions here that are very similar about paraprofessionals who have only 1 year left to complete their degree and certification. Is it possible for them to simply receive half of a stipend?
Yeah, so yes, because those amounts are up to, so they would be, if they don't need that whole amount, then yes, they could receive less.
Great. And Abigail just asked if the awarding of grant funding will be approved on a rolling basis or all after the deadline.
So the awarding of the grant funds will be essentially this first chunk, and I'll go through that timeline, will occur. It won't be on a rolling basis. So the district will get preliminary award notification on September 10th. And that'll be it for this cycle for the Grow Your Own grants. And then next year, if there's another TClass similar application, then we would roll that out. That would be the next time to get the award.
Thank you, Blair. I'll take this next question here. Reagan asks if funds from the grant are distributed directly to the paraprofessional from the LEA. So yes, the funds go from the state to the LEA, then to the para.
Mm-hmm. And that is also true for the education and training teacher stipends.
This is a good question here, Blair. Someone's asking if they could use one teacher from the high school and one from elementary, or do they both have to be currently teaching at the high school to receive the stipend? This is an anonymous attendee, but I'm assuming this question is for our teachers of the education and training courses.
If they're for the education and training courses, if that's the support you're referring to, then again, any certified Texas teacher can teach those classes. And really, those courses are about like effective teaching, classroom management, creating or analyzing strong lesson plans, things like that. So if you have a strong teacher at the elementary level you'd like to put into that class, you're certainly able to do that. And then for the if it's regarding paraprofessionals, it can be any in the district at any level as well.
Excellent. Blair, how much time do we have left for questions?
I think we still have some time, probably 3 minutes.
Okay. We have a question here. Can paraprofessionals work as teachers if they are enrolled in the program?
I think that's dependent on the program. I think they would need to have, that would be like something that you'd have to look into with your educator preparation program. And I think they would need some kind of probationary certificate in order to do that. Beth, you might know more about that. Feel free to correct me.
Yeah, no, it would depend on what their certification status is. So
Okay.
If they were in an alt cert and maybe they were going through their internship that year, then yes, but they would need some kind of certification for that.
Before I find the next question, I do want to let everyone know here, all 174 participants, if I have missed any questions here by the time we finish in another minute or two, you can email questions to gyo.grant@tea.texas.gov. Again, that's gyo.grant@tea.texas.gov, and we'll be able to follow up there.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. We're also going to be compiling all of these questions that you've put into the chat into an FAQ document. So in case you might have missed the answer, it'll be there for you in an FAQ document as well.
Blair, if we can direct this to the document, or we might be able to squeeze this question in. What are the requirements of a teacher to instruct as a dual credit class? Is it master's with 18 hours in a certain field like a traditional dual credit, or other?
They have to have a master's degree with 18 credits in like education or teaching. So it does have to include that.
Great. And we had a question clarifying the 6 candidates. Is the max of 6 candidates for 2 years? So like 4 in 1 year, 2 in another, or 3 in one and 3 in the other?
It's 6 total, and it's up to the district how y'all want to use those 6. So if all 6 want to start in the 22-23 year, they can do that. If you all want to split them and do, 3 in 1 year, 3 in another year, you can do that. I do just want to name though that we'll be asking for that candidate list in March of 2022. So at the minimum, you'll need to know who those 6 candidates are by then.
And then, Blair, time for one more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So a LEA has 3 teachers with bachelor's degrees and would like help on certification costs this year. Is that possible through GYO?
They would like support with the funding this year.
Certification, yeah. So they're 3, and I'm guessing they're 3 current teachers with bachelor's degrees help with certification.
So the NOGA will actually go, the Notice of Grant Award will go out tentatively December 1st, 2021. So they would, if they wanted to do something in the spring, that is possible to get that certification support then, but you wouldn't be able to do it before that Notice of Grant Award goes out.
Thank you all for your questions. Again, anything that we didn't answer live here or did not send you a direct message back on, you'll receive an FAQ with all of the questions that were asked here this morning.
Yeah. Now that you guys are pumped to apply for this Grow Your Own grant under TClass, if you could, I'll go through some of the timeline specifics and application pieces. So there is a Qualtrics application survey that opens on July 19th, which is next Monday. And that's kind of that simple form I told y'all you would fill out. This is where the LEAs will choose which decision points they'd like to be considered for. So if you're only considered in decision 4, this teacher recruitment support, then you can just pick that one. If you're interested in others, then you'll pick those. So it's kind of up to y'all. Again, the reflective questions I had you guys go through earlier, each decision point has similar questions for their specific program. So it's a good idea to kind of think through those before you decide which decisions you're going to apply for. The LEA will have until August 20th to complete that survey application. And then y'all will receive preliminary award notification on September 10th. Then after you get that notification, your district will finalize your application in eGrants. And then as I mentioned earlier, the Notice of Grant Award should go out on December 1st this year. Okay, so I mentioned the guidance document. There's also a budget calculator on the TClass webpage, which I encourage you to do to figure out how much funding you could actually get from this decision 4 support. So you can refer back to that to estimate how much you could potentially receive. Thank you guys for attending this decision point specific webinar. There are more to come throughout this week, which I'll preview on the next slide. And we're also going to have TClass office hours beginning the week of July 26th, which a representative from this decision 4 will be on those calls as well. Here are the decision point webinars. If you missed one of the earlier webinars, recordings and slide decks are available on the TClass webpage. And if you guys could take this quick 1-minute survey, it's bit.ly// /TClass-interest-form. And this just helps us get a sense of if you might be interested in applying. So I'll leave that up while you guys might be typing that in there. And as y'all are doing that, as Ron mentioned, if you have any follow-up questions, if they're general about TClass, there's a TClass email, tclass@tea.texas.gov. If it's specific to this decision forward, grow your own, then that would be gyogrant@tea.texas.gov. Oh, Beth, we can see your screen. All right, thank you guys so much for attending today. It was good getting to see everyone's names and all the districts you're from, and have a wonderful rest of your week.